Shantavia Griffin, student ID 900224298. This is my video submission for my Math 1111 final exam. The first problem we have is 5x plus 1 over 4 minus 3 over 2 equals 7x over 8. My first step is to multiply each side by 8. And I put this in parentheses, 5x plus 1 over 4 minus 3 over 2, parentheses, equals 7x over 8, parentheses. These 8's will cross out. The greatest common factor for this will be 4, so of course that will cross this 4 out, but 4 goes into 8 2 times, so when I rewrite, I'll rewrite it as 2, parentheses, 5x plus 1, parentheses, and then I still have my 8 times negative 3 over 2. The greatest common equals 7x. The greatest common factor for 2 and 8 would be 2, so that will cross out my 2, and that will give me 4. So I'll rewrite it as 2, parentheses, 5x plus 1, parentheses, 4 times negative 3 gives me a negative 12 equals 7x. Next, I'll use the distributive property to go inside of my parentheses. 2 times 5x gives me 10x. 2 plus 1 gives me a positive 2. Minus 12 equals 7x. Then I'll combine my like terms, which would be 2 minus negative 12, which would give me negative 10. And I'll bring down my 10x equals 7x. So then I'll go ahead and move my 7x to my left side, and of course move my negative 10 over to my right side, which I would then have to add plus 10 minus 7 minus 7x. So that gives me 10x minus 7x equals a positive 10. So now I have 10x minus 7x, which gives me 3x equals 10, and then I'll divide each side by 3. This cross out, and that leaves me with x equals 10 over 3, and that's my final answer for the first problem. For my second problem, we have 7x squared plus 3x equals 4. My first step is to bring my constant over. So I will go ahead and rewrite 7x squared plus 3x equals 4, but I'll rewrite it as minus 4. So then I have 7x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Now with this, I'll go ahead and I'll break it down. In 7x squared, I can have 7x times x, and that will give me 7x squared. Then I will have a negative and then a positive because this is a negative number. And so now I just have to figure out, and I know that 4 times a negative 4 times 1 will give me a negative 4, but also 4 minus 1 gives me 3, so those are my numbers. So I have negative 4 plus a positive 1. And then if I use the distributive property, it should give me this back, and I'll just do that because I like to check it. So 7x times 7x gives me 7x squared. And then 7x squared plus 1 gives me 7x. And then I'll do my distributive property here. 4 times x gives me negative 4x. And then 4 times 1 gives me a negative 4. So when I go ahead and factor out the problem, it's 7x squared plus 7x minus 4x gives me 3x, and then my minus 4. So this checks out with this, so I know that these are my two numbers. So I'll go ahead and set what I have in parentheses equal to 0. So now I'll add 4 to each side. That gives me 7x equals 4. And divide each side by 7. I have x equals 4 over 7, and that's my first answer. For my second part, I'll minus 1 from each side, and that should give me x equals a negative 1. And those are my two answers for my second problem.